Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Hey guys, happy Friday. Hope that you had a wonderful week. Excited that you're joining us today as we bring in feedback from the community and kind of live this life out together on the path to financial independence. To help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing quite well, Jonathan. Yeah, I had a couple little random frugal wins of the week. I feel like Laura and I have been signing up for like a bunch of random different subscriptions. I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast, but our family has recently gotten into watching the show Survivor, you know, like the CBS show Survivor.
Are they on like season 49 at this point?
Yeah, I think season 36, which is crazy to think that a show could be on that long, starts this week. So yeah, we've been watching kind of like concurrently the new seasons and also the back seasons. So the four of us, that's like our nighttime ritual. We watch for maybe 20 minutes or something. So it's not like a huge amount of time, but we've been working our way through all these old seasons. I think we've watched about 30 seasons already, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
I'm like only slightly embarrassed for you that you're admitting this live. That's wow.
Dude, you want
what?
That's so
I haven't
fun.
met anybody since 2006 that watched that show.
Oh my God, it's the best show ever created. I mean, the psychology, the group dynamics, the challenges, the deprivation, it's awesome. And you know, the funny thing is like, I am not embarrassed about anything I do in my life. So like, there's no reason to feel embarrassed about it. But so anyway, the reason why I went into that little tangent was we had to sign up for like Hulu to watch a bunch of seasons and then CBS All Access to watch some others. And stupidly, like not frugal people, we just kept these subscriptions going and we hadn't canceled Hulu. So I actually went through and canceled that. And now we're just about done with the necessity for that CBS All Access. So we're going to cancel that here shortly. And yeah, it's amazing how insidious those subscriptions really are. Like they just are there and you forget about it, right? Like it's easy to not cancel it. So I mentioned a while back, I just got the Chase Sapphire Preferred credit card, which is like my absolute favorite travel rewards card. And I was able to reopen it. So Laura actually reopened it about 3 months ago, and I just reopened it. And I was going through and transferring all of my recurring payments, you know, my health insurance, my Easy Pass, my Verizon, all this stuff. And in doing that, you kind of realize, oh, wow, I've got a lot of these recurring payments. I need to get rid of some of them. So yeah, that was like a nice little time to cut and cull some of these things. And also I noticed that my Verizon bill jumped like 50% last month. And again, just because I was lazy and I didn't pay attention, I didn't notice it. I had some promotion for free HBO and Showtime, which obviously I don't want to pay for, but I'll take for free. And we had it for a year and it just jumped up and I missed it. So I called up, canceled it, got it refunded off my bill, and all's well in the world. And I'm back down to just basically paying for the internet now. But you know, that if I was asleep at the wheel, that was $40+ a month, plus Hulu, plus the CBS All Access. I mean, that's $60+ a month that I just cut out, and it took me 20 minutes to do. You know, that was a pretty good little win.
You know, what you're describing, this is the insidious nature of lifestyle creep. I mean, this is how it happens. So people, there's a reason that marketers use this idea of subscriptions and free trials. I loathe the free trials just because I always suspect that there is a hook on the back end. And I usually miss it because I'm asleep at the wheel. And let me tell you, Brad, this past month, interestingly enough, I actually went back and tracked every single recurring expense that I had, just to kind of, I don't do it every single month. I'm not a religious budgeter. I have a high savings rate. I put my money in my accounts first, and then I spend what's left after that. And so it kind of sets itself. But every once in a while, even when you've got this other stuff figured out, it's important to go back and check to see where your money is actually going and making sure that you haven't got off the rails. And I realized that there were a couple things that I could nip into and get under control, but the part of my budget that was allowed for food, because I hadn't been tracking what was going in there closely, at first glance showed up as a $900 bill. There's just three of us. It's me, my wife, and my son. And in the month of January, I spent $900, quote unquote, on food. And I was like, what the heck is going on? What happened? Now, to be fair, that includes some family outings. That includes supplies for the dogs, dog food, the baby supplies. There are some other things that got incorporated in this, maybe even a few supplies, just because I was too lazy to split the categories. But this is going to be my new hill to die on. I'm going to find out what happened, and we're going to start tracking everything just to get an understanding of how do you bleed $900 a month on three people for groceries. That's insane.
Yeah, that does sound like a big number. I mean, in fairness, it's not like it's not $900 or zero, right? So like what would be your baseline? Like how much do you think you spent extra in January than your perfect world scenario? And I don't mean like eating beans and rice every meal, but your normal optimized month. And also, do you have any sense of maybe a couple decisions that you made that would have led to spending that extra amount of money that you could pass along to the audience, just kind of like a cautionary tale?
So, I created that Costco document last year. It's actually one of the articles that we have on the site, the Ultimate Costco Meal Plan. And I was able to basically, for my wife and myself, when I was really focusing on it, get us two down to $300 per month. That's for both of us, using kind of the $2 per person per meal metric. So now there's three of us. I do have a son involved as well. But basically that comes up to, if you do 3 meals a day, that's close to $180 per person. So $540 per month. I mean, $600 seems like almost a max. That would be an extraordinarily generous budget for a family of 3 to basically have all sorts of luxuries built in, as long as you were just using the $2 per person per meal as a baseline. And then I'd also like to give myself some credit. In that $900, there were a few one-offs that included restaurants. So let's give ourselves, $100 margin there, bringing it down to $800. There's still $200 of just getting lax that I don't know really where it went. And I think that is ultimately what it comes down to. Like, was it just that we had to purchase excessive amounts of dog food and home supplies and we didn't split categorize that? I'm not like a crazy stickler on the $2 per person per meal, but I hate the idea that by being lax and just letting life happen and not having a plan, I'm blowing up my food budget, and all the extra money that I've carved out by being intentional with my life in other areas is now just going to the void of food, which, 8 hours after you had it, I don't care how good the meal is, you're thinking about the next one.
Yeah, I mean, setting a plan is very, very helpful. Are you guys, when you're cooking, are you cooking for multiple meals at once, like leftovers, or is it like, how often are you cooking per week?
Yes, we do batch meals. So when we make like a curry lentil soup or something like that, or a chili that we just tried recently, that lasts for 3 or 4 days. And I basically just eat it till it's gone. We have a pretty standard breakfast. We have a shake, that's maybe has some spinach. There's some healthy items in there. And then we have a dinner, and that dinner is usually repeated for 2 to 3 days. So we're pretty good about that. I suspect if I were to really analyze it, we were a little bit excessive with the meat and maybe a couple prepackaged meals. And I realized that I lost the Costco war. With Costco, you can get a great deal on different items and you can purchase a lot of things in bulk, but everything that you pick up off the shelf at Costco will be $10 or more. So you can use this to your advantage. If you have some intention and you're buying low cost per calorie items, then this can get incorporated and actually can save you tons of money. But I think we probably, since we didn't really go to Costco with a plan this past month, we may have purchased too much inventory, and we still have large portions of that inventory, for coming months. And so I think in order to salvage this and have it dollar cost average, I need to come up with a plan of what I actually have and then build meals that can build off that baseline and then add less expensive ingredients to that to make it even out.
Yeah, the meat certainly adds up. I mean, that's an easy way to jump your food budget up fairly significantly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you go to Costco or when you go to any store, really, your beans and rice are pennies on the dollar. Your meats, that's going to start at $2.99, $3.99 a pound for chicken, and then go all the way up $5.99 to $20.99. for some of the more expensive meats. Now we shy away from that upper end, but still clearly meat is the most expensive line item in the budget. And then that actually presents an opportunity. I'm one of these people that is not dogmatic about anything. I'm willing to change. And I particularly love this idea of thinking about what has someone else figured out that I haven't. And if there's entire groups of people that have dedicated their lives to being vegan or vegetarian for various reasons, maybe there's something there worth exploring. So I'm kind of adopting this idea of being maybe an occasional vegetarian, where I look to diversify out of a meat-based dinner and at least several days a week start incorporating some of these much lower cost basis items that are heavy on legumes, beans, and rice into my diet. So I'm going to try and build a system around that. And actually, Brad, I bring this up to say that I reached out to two fellows in our community, Stephen and James, both vegans. James writes over at Rethink the Rat Race, uber fit guy. I think he actually does some competitive lifting or bodybuilding, but like in my mind, one of the limitations of veganism was always, how do you get your protein? Clearly not an issue. And then Steven is one of the most optimized guys I've ever met. And he actually created a side hustle, basically doing like the Blue Apron type programming for vegans. And with all the overhead that you have of having a business and everything else, he was still able to get his price point right down at around $3 per person per meal, I think, because he's using some of the benefits of the vegan lifestyle, which in no small part is the low cost of the main ingredients. Which is absolutely incredible. But I thought, you know what if I could bring both of them on the show? What could I learn from them to incorporate into my own life? Because if some people can be vegan for life, surely I could be vegan for a week, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all about testing. As you said, like get a little bit better, 1% better, we're talking about here at the podcast. So that's something worth exploring. Obviously, it works for many people. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your results.
Well, I asked them if they would come on the show and maybe walk me through it. So you're going to get firsthand exposure to the vegan lifestyle.
All right. Very cool.
So Brad, my understanding is one of your favorite days of the year was this past Saturday. I only say I understand it was one of your favorite days because it doesn't even show up on my radar. But now that I've met you and you're a big part of my life, I wait for the annual takeaways. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what is your favorite day of the year?
All right. Well, I'm not sure it's my favorite day, but it's certainly up there. Is when Warren Buffett releases his Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letter. It was this past Saturday, and I was sitting there like a kid in a candy store, like literally refreshing my browser every 5 seconds right around 8 a.m. Eastern time because I knew they were going to publish it instantly. So I just opened it up, pressed print, and just bombed through this whole thing. And it's basically like a free MBA is reading Warren Buffett's thoughts on the year past. He always talks, of course, about the operations of Berkshire and their many sprawling areas of business and interests, et cetera. But he always has like a couple of pages of actual real insight. And I just find that it's a fascinating read. And if you just Google Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholders letters, there's this landing page that comes up and you can go back all the way to 1977. So it's 77 to 2017.
You have read all 30 years, haven't you? All 40 years. Is that 40 years?
That's 40 years. Yeah. Yeah, I think I have read them all. I've probably read them all multiple times.
Dude, are you going to go to Omaha?
Yeah, actually, I just booked it a couple of days ago. First time ever. It's like one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. I think a bunch of people from the FI community are going to be there. So I know Carl and Mindy from 1500 Days, our friend Marla, who we've met at many Camp FIs and FinCon. And I think Mr. Money Mustache and possibly I heard JD Roth. So there's definitely a bunch of people. And I actually posted it in our Nebraska local group, just saying, hey, I'm going to be in town. Let's try to get a meetup on Friday night. And instantly, like 5 to 10 people said, I'm in. Just let me know. So, yeah, we might have like a FI get together. So, yeah, I mean, even if you're in the surrounding area, I know I'm flying into Kansas City and driving over to Omaha. So who knows? I mean, if you live in Kansas City, you live anywhere in striking distance, we'll let you know when this is going to be. But yeah, it should be a really fun weekend. It's basically, they call it like the Woodstock for capitalists. I think there's like 40,000 plus people descend on Omaha, Nebraska, basically to celebrate Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and Berkshire Hathaway. So yeah, it should be a really fun time.
That is amazing. All right, dude, have a great time. I'm done teasing you, but that is awesome.
Yeah, and Buffett had a lot of like really interesting takeaways. I'm not going to read them all here, but he talked about his 10-year bet, basically where he took the S&P 500 versus basically this one guy got to pick his set of hedge funds that he thought would outperform amongst all the genius, and I say that very tongue-in-cheek, genius hedge fund managers who are out there in existence. He got to pick basically 5 fund of funds. So Buffett said it's essentially 200 hedge funds. And it was just a horse race, which inclusive of fees, and that was the key part for Buffett, was inclusive of fees, which will outperform over a decade. And the S&P 500 absolutely trounced these 5 fund of funds. I mean, it was just a complete beatdown. And as Buffett said, and we've said all the time, performance comes, performance goes, fees never falter. And I just loved that quote. Fees are so important. And he's saying, let me emphasize that there was nothing aberrational about stock market behavior over the 10-year stretch. If a poll of investment, quote, experts had been asked late in 2007 for a forecast of the long-term common stock returns, their guesses would have likely averaged close to the 8.5% actually delivered by the S&P 500. Making money in that environment should have been easy. Indeed, Wall Street, quote, helpers, and that's the term he uses to talk about basically these people who siphon off funds. And he's saying Wall Street helpers earned staggering sums. While this group prospered, however, many of their investors experienced a lost decade. It goes back to what we're saying here all the time. Fees matter. And that's why we invest in low-cost index funds as a real significant portion of our portfolios.
Can I throw like a Molotov cocktail into this conversation?
You may.
So I'm going to set up an episode that we got coming up in like 6 or 7 episodes. And I realized that, just like we all have blind spots, this is something that we didn't highlight. And so I'm basically teasing you and letting you know about an episode that's coming in the near future. And we brought on Brian Feraldi talking about the unique advantages of the individual investor. And I say that to say that Brad and I have spent a lot of time talking about the dogma of the FI community and the power of index funds, which I still 100% believe. But those conversations have always been pitted against this hedge fund type active management that's siphoning off incredible percentages of fees, like your money just disappearing into the void to pay these guys, and there's giving you no benefit. It's incredibly expensive. And so that's why we always highlight this bet that Warren had. But it's come to my attention, increasingly so, that there is a large percentage of our community that goes it alone, which is kind of like an option C, this idea of the individual investor. And I wanted to say that the ire that Brad and I focus on these super smart active managers is not directed at the individual investor. I mean, Brian has convinced me that there is something here. Now, it's not something that I'm telling you should do. I think for most people, index investing is just the way to go. But there are people out there that have consistently beaten the index and actually have, in Brian's words, some unique advantages over the high-paid, powered Wall Street advisors.
Yeah, I mean, that was an eye-opening episode, and that'll be coming up soon, so we won't spend too much time talking about it. But for us, it's either or, generally. It's low-cost index fund investing or these very expensive managers. I guess Brian's argument is, especially for people with a long-term mindset, there's an option C. So for people in the FI community who can think long-term, can look at these as businesses instead of just little tickers on the screen, then there are ways to do individual stock investing at a very low cost and without the perverse incentives that many of these managers who need to hit quarterly forecasts that they are operating under. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting rethink. Again, I'm not sure that it necessarily is going to change my investing strategy in the next couple of years, but, it made me think. And I think that's the beauty of a podcast like this. And that's the beauty of just learning and being open to new ideas.
And that is it. Dude, you're like a kid at a candy store when you're in this community because you're always finding out something new, some additional way to optimize. And when you start stacking these together, you just realize I am in such a different place, surrounded by such different people than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And the more you immerse yourself in the dialogue, the more opportunities open up. And I love this idea of stacking this little piece of extra knowledge onto a great baseline that I've been building for myself over the last 4 or 5 years.
And what's funny is, as you were talking about that, I was pulling up another quote from the Berkshire Hathaway letter that Buffett said basically when he was talking about their common stock investments, and they own significant positions. I mean, hundreds of billions in individual companies. He said, Charlie and I view the marketable common stocks that Berkshire owns as interests in businesses, not as ticker symbols to be bought or sold based on their chart patterns, the target prices of analysts, or the opinions of media pundits. Instead, we simply believe that if the businesses of the investees are successful, as we believe most will be, our investments will be successful as well. Sometimes the payoffs to us will be modest. Occasionally, the cash register will ring loudly. And sometimes I will make expensive mistakes. Overall, and over time, we should get decent results. In America, equity investors have the wind at their back. And yeah, I love that closing. And yeah, looking at these as businesses. And that goes back to what Jim Collins talked about on the very first episode we had him on, talking about the simple path to wealth, which is these are not stock symbols. These are companies. When you invest in the total stock market index fund or the S&P 500, you're investing in hundreds or thousands of companies that have tens upon tens of millions of workers. These are real businesses where people are trying to grow them and grow their income and help you as an owner. And that's just kind of a cool way to look at it, I'd say.
We got this Facebook message in the group from Ida, who's been in the group for like about a week or two. And she said, I just wanted to say how happy I am to have found this group. I've been immersing myself in all your knowledge by searching old posts and listening to the podcast. I like how FIRE and FI seems to be a personal journey and not one size fits all. You all, and she's talking about the Facebook group, are so inspirational, and I actually find myself feeling kind of giddy most of the time, like I'm a kid on Christmas Day morning or in a candy store or whatever. I was excited last summer to start our Dave Ramsey journey, but I'm even more excited to have found Choose FI. It's as if I'm moving on to a higher degree of learning, no offense, Dave, which fits better for where we are in our lives and our current financial situation. Thank you all. And this is the same journey that Brad and I are on. This is the path, right? This is it's not the destination, it's the journey. The actual destination, if that's all you're fixated on, can be kind of lackluster once you reach it. It's about the process and these kind of little tidbits. You know, this episode probably should be titled The Exodus to Omaha, because it's just excited about finding your tribe of people and getting a little bit better together. I think I've said this before, Brad, but the idea of FI at face value has some real appeal. I would say it's borderline sexy, although it's kind of hard to put compound interest and sexy in the same sentence. But then, you know, that it has this kind of grab your attention, get rich quickish type appeal. And then when you get to FI, that has its own level of appeal right there. So you have the entrance and the end. And both of those are kind of cool ideas. But the reality is it's that 5, 10, or 15-year slog in the middle where you're having to make value choices and you're having to be very intentional and put your money to work for you. And that can seem very lonely. It can kind of carve you out and set you aside. And if you're just doing it by yourself, it's easy to go off the rails, right? And just to lose motivation. But if you find a group of people that are working to common goals together, now you're meeting up with people in Omaha, Nebraska. Now you're meeting up with a local tribe in your area. Now you're finding a mastermind group to join and get started building a business together. Now the entire process is lighting you up. And each additional step you put in, you're getting feedback from other people saying, oh, you may not want to dig over there. There's power lines over there. You could get messed up. And someone's saying, but if you try this can actually 10x your results. And so as you start immersing yourself in this community, everything gets easier.
Yeah, I mean, community is what it all comes back to. And I mean, how many times have we talked about this here on the podcast? This is the essence of FI to me. It's trying to get better at life, a happier, more fulfilled life where you have freedom and you have people around you who understand you, who you enjoy spending time with and can relate to. We cannot overstate enough. These FI meetups, these local groups, going to Omaha, going to Camp FI, going to Chautauqua, right, that we talked about on the Monday episode. These are the important things. It's important to find that tribe. Humans crave connection. They crave these stories also, like hearing people's success stories. Really, I know it helps me. It makes my day when I read something like this, that Ida just joins this group and sees that there's this entire community here and there's inspiration to get from this group. And I just love that. I really do. Jonathan, like that's a kind of a perfect segue into talking about Chautauqua.
I was thinking the same thing. You know, we did get some feedback on there. Mara says, I can't go this year, but so much FOMO. FOMO is one of those terms that I had no idea what it meant. in 2017, and it just like landed on my desk at the end of this past year. Now I see it everywhere. It's one of these like pure millennial terms, but I get it. It's that idea that there is going to be something awesome that happens and you're not going to be there for it. The great thing is there will be Chautauquas every year, so you'll always be able to go to one. But Rena was also listening and said, I've been looking forward to today's podcast for weeks. And it did not disappoint. She signed up for week 2. She can't wait for the experience. What an amazing, inspiring group of presenters. Watch out, Greece, here we come. And the message that blew my mind was actually from Sebastian. He's actually heads up the local chapter out of the UAE. And he just said, I just finished listening to it. It's totally awesome. You've captured exactly how we feel about going for a week somewhere with 25 people we don't know at all. But for us attendees who have been listening and reading about you for many years, it actually feels like we already know you and the other speakers. And by the way, probably already know, but I'm totally in for organizing a Chautauqua on this side of the planet if you're interested. It can be in Dubai or some other exotic place like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Zanzibar, or the Maldives. Brad, these are the exotic places. You know, I titled that episode, Oh, the Places We Will Go, because when you have freedom, when you have flexibility, all the things that being at FI or on the path to FI provides, these are your options. And now, instead of life being this limited, oh, what I can't do, it's what do I want to do? And it's not because you're pressured by the social influences. You're being peer pressured into a decision where you're going to make a trip that you really don't want to make, to be at a place where you really don't want to be, but you know you have to do it. But rather you're selecting, you're choosing to be a part of a group of like-minded individuals that have gotten out of the rat race and are spending 7 days building these relationships and then figuring out what they want to build together from there.
Yeah, and I mean, this particular event, Chautauqua, there are barriers to entry. Jim Collins was very upfront about that. This is a week plus out of your life because you have to travel to Greece, depending on where you're coming from. That's significant. Obviously, you're paying for an entire week at a beautiful resort with food. This is not something that you just do on a whim. This is something that you have to be really committed to do. And like Jim and the group said, it does self-select. So there's a lot to be said for that, but also this is one of many events in the FI community. And that's the beautiful thing. There's no one size fits all. And like Jonathan, you were saying, like, there's no obligations. There's nothing that you should feel bad about. Oh, I can't go to this, or, oh, that's too much time. Like, there are events for everyone, right? Stephen, the organizer of Camp FI, is trying to make many more of these accessible weekend events throughout the U.S. I know he just opened a couple in Arkansas and in California for later this year. There's FinCon, and maybe there'll even be that FI Festival, Jonathan, that you had mentioned previously. I think you may be chatting with some potential organizers for that. So, I mean, there are things going down, and there are the local groups, right? There are over 130 local groups throughout the U.S. and the world where you can get together with your tribe on a regular basis. Now, obviously, Chautauqua is the original event, and it does hold a special place in the community's heart, if you will. I can't wait to go. I'm so fortunate, but I do realize that this is an event that is not easy for everyone to go to. But, you know, that does make it all the more special, I guess, for the people who were able to carve out that time and the money and the travel. I mean, it's not easy to leave your life, but I know, for one, this is an event of a lifetime for me, and I really just can't wait.
When you talk about the local groups, man, these things are, you know, as the advantages become more apparent to people, there is increasingly a call to get one in people's local cities. I mean, it's moving out of the major metros where a large percentage of our initial audience was, like the San Diego, San Francisco, and now it's like, this is an environment that I need to cultivate in my neighborhood, in my zip code. So we just had a request to get one in Chenley, Arizona. There's a new one that just started in Scandinavia. I just got another request saying, this is amazing, the one for Scandinavia, but what if we could get one for Norway? Now, specifically for Norway, like, get it down into the granular level so we can learn how to optimize our specific city. And I'm not surprised by that. I mean, it's so nice to get a group of people that are sharing their own ways to hack their neighborhoods, hack the cities, like optimize their specific city for a FI lifestyle. And what does that look like? Well, it probably looks like sharing recommended resource providers. It probably looks like finding out about frugal events that people can do together, sharing lives together. I mean, that is essentially what this really comes down to, is how do we make this community more real? I think many of us tend to be introverts at a first glance. That's a common theme that I've seen. Someone wrote us an email basically saying the thing about introverts is not that we don't like to talk. We just despise small talk. We can't get excited about it. If we can get past the meet and greet and go to what actually fires us up, we can't shut up, because this is like what we've been trying to get to, but we just could never make it past the small talk. I'd be honest with you, I think that I identify with that. It totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, I certainly identify that as well. It's those large meetings and large groups, they just aren't my thing. That doesn't light me up for whatever reason. And it still gives me a bit of nervousness even now. But yeah, I mean, these events, you just instantly feel comfortable. It's lifelong friends, even though you just met them, because there's so much in common. And I've never felt a bit of nervousness at any of these events because everyone's so welcoming. Everyone's there for the same reason. And yeah, I mean, it's truly wonderful. And I'm just so happy to see so many of these events popping up for people all across the country, all across the world. Then you have someone like Sebastian who is willing to organize on his side of the globe. I mean, what a cool thing. I love getting emails from him, by the way. He's as Jonathan said, the head of our group. I think he's located in Dubai. He's the head of the UAE group. And I think they have like 2,500 members. They have monthly events where they have speakers and they have organized events and also more low-key ones. But yeah, him and his wife are going to Chautauqua, and yeah, really looking forward to meeting them.
So Brad, I thought maybe we could just take a couple minutes and talk about some behind-the-scenes stuff, just because it will affect what happens with this Friday roundup. And I think it's a positive change. For our audience that's listening, we have been getting better and better at getting these episodes prepared. So we actually have like 6 or 7 episodes that we've already been able to get organized and ready to go to roll out on their particular Monday. That has provided us the ability to start thinking about what else can we do to make this Friday roundup better. The idea that I pitched Brad on was if we can get basically 4 or 5 months worth of Monday episodes in the bag and ready to roll out, we can start taking our attention off of those Monday episodes for a period of time, and we can circle back, and maybe we can create a way to have some of the people in our community actually come on our show, either to do live case studies or to just talk about something that they figured out that we could add in, either to share a success, a financial win, or a financial hack that they've pulled off. Maybe there's a way to carve out a few episodes over the next couple months to actually talk with people in our community about, what does this path look like for them? So I pitched Brad on the idea. We'll get some feedback from him, but I think that this is the place we want to land over the next couple months.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And also, just to be clear, we have been recording like 2 Monday episodes every Thursday. So we have been working like to the bone, basically. It's but with this important goal in mind, which is to get a couple months ahead so we'd have some mental space to work on bigger things, potentially coming up with ideas that can help the community generally, as opposed to just being in the day-to-day slog of producing 2 podcasts a week, which is pretty time consuming, obviously. So we decided to kind of put it into a very short period of time where we work more significantly. And yeah, that should open up time to have these options for Friday roundups, which I like a lot. I think the idea of getting more community feedback and getting actual voices on the podcast other than just the 2 of us. I think that's what we always envisioned from the Friday roundup. And we've done a pretty good job of it, I'd say. Like we play voicemails, we bring in quotes from the Facebook group and emails and things like that. But yeah, it would be cool to have like a more live aspect and maybe have recurring guests and people can ask questions, kind of hearkening back to our case study idea that you brought up, Jonathan. Like we had that one case study with Paul a while ago, but it wound up being so time consuming and significant. And because we didn't have the structure for it, it didn't work and we didn't have a second one. But yeah, I mean, I'm all in on having more of those and bringing on a diverse set of voices from our community to speak to the community. Because I think, as we always talk about, it's all about stories, and to get people from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic, different whatever, right? And have their stories on the podcast. Like, I think that can only help us. So yeah, I mean, I'm all about this. I think it's great.
We need to do a little bit more work to get ahead on our Monday episodes, but this is something that we're planning for the spring and summer. So we'll be excited to roll that out. And obviously you'll be the first to hear about it. And what's cool, Brad, is that these don't always have to be these super consequential, life-altering segments. Sometimes it could just be engaging and going into a little bit more detail on a particular aspect. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I just told you that I had my birthday. My family got me a board game for a gift. No surprise there. They know me. But what's happened over time is that we have collected a large community of people that also are passionate about board games, probably even more so than I. And I got an email from Luke, basically asking this exact thing. He said, Jonathan, I hear you on the podcast talking about your love of board games. What would your current recommendations be? I'm looking for some new games, those for adults or families. Thanks. Brad, this is actually something that we promised to do a long time ago, and just too many things got moving and we forgot about it. But I would love to take just a couple minutes and throw my current favorite board game recommendations out there on the show. Do you have any input on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the board game expert, so let's start with you, and then, yeah, I'll talk about what my family plays. But I know I've mentioned a bunch of them on the podcast in the past, so I think it's going to be kind of beating a dead horse. So why don't you go for it?
Okay. So in my mind, board games right now are their own subculture, and the FI community has obviously a lot of overlap, but they are having a true resurgence. Tabletop games are absolutely blowing up right now as people move away from the video games and realizing that they want to still have that fun, enjoyable, slightly competitive experience, but they want to do it with friends. Nothing provides that intimacy better than a solid board game. I mean, it fires at all cylinders. And the ones that are coming out, I mean, this is not Monopoly. This is not, and in my mind, this doesn't even include Settlers of Catan. There's an entire new list of board games that are out there. And there's some really great resources for finding good games, but I'm just going to mention today a couple that I have fallen in love with over the last year. And one interesting thing about board games is you really do have to think about who your audience is, right? You're not going to be playing Cards Against Humanity with your mother. It's probably a bad choice. And if you are playing it with your mother, that's a very interesting dynamic too, but that's a separate conversation. So in my mind, you really do need to think about like, what are you playing and with who are you playing it? And so there's a couple that I have in mind, and I kind of break them up into categories. There's the short games for non-committed people. So you're trying to hook somebody into playing a board game. They have short attention spans, and you probably don't have them for very long. If you try to explain the rules for 30, 40 minutes on their first playthrough, you know you're going to lose them. And so for those two, my two favorites currently are Exploding Kittens and Coup. Both of those are absolutely phenomenal at grabbing you. You can learn the rules in 5 minutes. You can play it over and over again relatively quickly, and they become this instant hook that make you want to get into your next game, whatever that may be. Have you played either of those, Brad?
I have not. The second game was, what was it called? Coup? And could you spell that?
Yeah, it's spelled COUP. It's a short bluffing game. You have two cards, and both of them have a character. The character has an action and a reaction. And it's a bluffing game where no one else sees your card, and you get to play these. But when you're playing the card, you're playing it basically face down, so nobody sees what you have. And so the card that you play, you can say it's whatever you want. And so it's kind of a bluffing and reaction type game. It's really, really cool. And the more you play it, the better you get, because everybody gets more devious with each additional play. It's incredibly fascinating.
Are either of those good for families?
I would say they're phenomenal for families, probably 8 and up. You could probably play with Molly too, because I know that she really grabs stuff really quickly, but Anna would crush it.
Nice. Okay. Very cool.
For family games, one of them I know you're a huge fan of. It's Ticket to Ride. That's a great family game. The other one is Dixit, Dixit. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then Dixit is a tome that you can never finish. It's truly incredible. Each card comes with this incredibly beautiful graphic on it. And kind of it's like an apples to apples type game, but it allows you to use your imagination and allows you to adapt the cards to very specific circumstances. It has so much more playability and repeatability over something like apples to apples, which can get kind of tiresome after 3 or 4 plays. I'm a huge fan of both of those.
Yeah, well, Jonathan, Ticket to Ride is my family's all-time favorite game. I mean, we probably play, 5 to 10 games a week at this point. We just virtually every day, somebody's playing Ticket to Ride. And it was funny, the other day, my youngest daughter and my mom were playing Ticket to Ride Europe on the kitchen table, and Laura and I were playing Ticket to Ride America on the floor. So it was like simultaneous Ticket to Ride games. It's a really great game. There's a lot of strategy. It's pretty easy to pick up. My younger daughter, Molly, is 6 years old, and she can really, at this point, she can play at an adult level. Like, she needs zero help, and she's really good. I mean, she wins fairly often. So, yeah, I mean, that's a game you can play with really kids of most ages, and again, a lot of fun, fairly easy, fairly quick, and just an all-time good game. There are a bunch of different versions. We've tried a few of them, and yeah, we definitely like Europe the best, with the America game coming in a very, very close second.
And I can confirm that I have the America one, but I had it and it's fine. But when I was looking up like reviews over and over again, I kept hearing everybody say the Europe one is the one to get. So if you're there's different versions. I think they all have the basic rules in common, but the Europe one would be the one that I would purchase if I were doing it over again. Okay, now this leaves the remaining group, the committed adult group, the people that are willing to learn a game with slightly more complex rules, and they're willing to put the time in. I have a much longer list, but I'm not going to wear you down on this particular episode. Since this is a segment, I'm going to give you two. My absolute current reigning champion favorites. The first one probably will be no surprise. It's going to be Pandemic, 4-player game. It is incredibly addictive. You will lose. Like, it's a cooperative game. So the weird dynamic is that you, as the 4 players, are working together against the board, and the board is acting as this epidemic or pandemic that's taking over the world, kind of like a virus wiping out the world. And so each player has a move, and then the board has a move. You will lose and lose and lose this game. But when you win, it is the best feeling on earth. And instead of you feeling like one of you is winning, the rest of you are losing, you're winning or losing together. So that alpha person that always is saying, we need to do this, we need to do this, or that's kind of railroading everybody else and then triumphing in their own victory, that whole dynamic goes away. And now you're working together as a team, and everybody has kind of this equal role. And people that kind of like to be directed a little bit more can rely on input from other people, and people that like to talk more, there's a way for them to interact as well. So it's just the perfect dynamic. It's a great game for people that like a slightly more intense game. And then the other one, this is an adult game, but it also works well for new people as well that have never played one before. This is Avalon, and this combines the best of like a werewolf type game or a mafia type game where you have petite people that are secretly traitors and you have to work out different identities and figure it out. And there can be, either the evil team or the good team can win. It is phenomenal. We played this at Campfire in Florida. I slow played the traitor role and had one of the greatest wins of my life at that event. We played 9 rounds, I think, over the course of a single day. It is a phenomenal party game. If you're coming to Campfire Mid-Atlantic, I'll probably bring it with me so you'll get a chance to play that. It is just that good of a game. Brad, you got skipped out and couldn't play because you didn't have a voice.
Yeah, I really couldn't do anything, unfortunately. But yeah, I saw you guys playing all those games. I know I saw Pandemic as well, and yeah, would have loved to have joined, but yeah, it was just too difficult, unfortunately. But next time for sure.
All right, so those are 6 recommendations. I will put all the links to all those in the show notes for today's episode if you want to get a little bit more information about any one of those. But yeah, those are my current 6. Honestly, Brad, I have like 40 games on my shelf. You've seen my shelf. It's a little bit ridiculous, but games are like, they are totally having a resurgence right now, and I am absolutely loving it. Like, I have no interest in playing video games. It's all about how can I get 3 or 4 people together that don't mind learning a new game with slightly complex rules, and let's go just have some fun with this.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I really do. It's just a nice kind of good old-fashioned evening, right? To just get together with friends and play and have fun and learn a new game, have some strategy. I mean, it's all good as far as I'm concerned. I love it. So yeah, love to see the resurgence.
So Brad, it came to my mind that you have kind of gotten a free pass on travel rewards lately. Like, we haven't really hit any new ways to use it. And that's because some of this stuff, once you have it locked down, you have it locked down. But I know that personally, I always like finding out that 1 or 2 extra things that I could be thinking about. And we had this fantastic email that came through asking about the Southwest Companion Pass. And since that's in my frame of reference right now, I thought we could take just a couple minutes and talk about it. Are you up for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so this was from Michael, and it just came through actually just a couple hours ago. And he says, hey, Jonathan and Brad, first of all, just wanted to say thank you for slowly changing our lives. My brothers and I are in a race to FI, and all the credit is due to this podcast. Again, thank you. Now, my question is in regards to the Southwest Companion Pass. My wife and I are just finishing the spending on the Southwest Business Premier, and I just opened the Southwest Plus card, which has a $50K bonus and will result in the Companion Pass. Thanks, Brad. Now, I know basically anything we book on Southwest is going to be a pretty good deal once we have the Companion Pass, since it's buy one, get one. but how do I maximize the bang for my points? We're super flexible with dates. Typically, we get away twice a year, once in the spring, once in the late summer, early fall. We don't have a set destination, but we would like to be someplace warm. All right, Brad, quick hit stuff. Any thoughts come to mind?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, first off, congrats, Michael. The Southwest Companion Pass is, as people call it, the quote holy grail of travel rewards. Basically, you get, for the audience out there, you get this companion pass where how it works is once you earn 110,000 Southwest points in one calendar year, so one person earns those 110,000 points, they get this award known as the Companion Pass. And it's good through December 31st of the following year. So the real trick is to get it as early in the first calendar year as you can. So it's good for almost 24 months because, again, it's good through December 31st of the following year. So to get 110,000 points, in this case, Michael was able to open up the Southwest Business Card and the Southwest Plus Card. And the business card currently has a 60,000 mile bonus and the plus has a 50,000. So once he met the spending requirements on those bonuses, he had over 110,000 miles just right there earned in one calendar year, and it triggered the Companion Pass immediately. So that is like the best way possible to earn it. Now, Southwest, as I've said before on this podcast, like I absolutely love Southwest miles because they are the easiest of all miles to redeem. There are no award limitations. So whereas with a lot of the legacy carriers, the Americans, Deltas, Uniteds of the world, it can be somewhat frustrating sometimes to try to book flights with miles, especially at the quote saver level. That's pretty much all you'd ever want to book, which is, let's say 25,000 miles round trip in the US is the saver level ticket. And just for argument's sake, like 60,000 miles is a round trip saver flight to Europe. So those are kind of like keep in the back of your mind rough estimates of what you should be spending. So there are limitations, unfortunately. There are millions of people with these miles and people book these seats. So there might only be a couple of saver level tickets on each flight if you're lucky. So that's why some people do get a bit frustrated with frequent flyer miles. But with Southwest, that's not the case at all. Basically, if they have a flight that you can book normally, then just to pay for it with cash or whatever, you can use your miles. That makes it dramatically easier for especially families, for people looking to book more than one ticket at one time, because there are not those limitations. So with a United, you might find one or two seats, but if you have four people, well, what do you do in that scenario? So that can be slightly frustrating, but Southwest, there's none of that. So it really is just a simple function of what the cash price is what they charge in points. So unfortunately, like to Michael's question, is there a way to maximize? There really aren't any of those sweet spots that you'll see, like these kind of random quirks of award charts that you might see like with some frequent flyer mile partners and things like that. We've talked about them in the past. Like one of the best is using Korean Air miles to fly Delta flights to Europe for only 25,000 miles round trip. So I know that sounds random, but Korean Air miles are not that difficult to come across. They're a transfer partner of Chase Ultimate Rewards. So if you had Chase Ultimate Rewards, you could transfer them to Korean Air and then find a flight that is available for Delta. But again, you're using your Korean Air miles and you're saving 20,000 miles round trip because it would cost you 45,000 on Delta to fly round trip to Hawaii, whereas it only costs 25,000 of these Korean Air miles. So that's a quote sweet spot, as people call it. It's just a quirk of an award chart, basically, generally using a partner airline. None of that exists on Southwest, but what you make up for it is being able to actually use these miles whenever you want, essentially.
Yeah, it's that flexibility, right? The flexibility is the counterpoint in the other half of that, and it makes up for so much. It's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it sure does. And one of the cool things, so Michael talked about going somewhere warm. I just mentioned Hawaii, right? Southwest is opening up routes to Hawaii supposedly later this year. That's the target. So later in 2018. And that'll be fantastic. I mean, that's it's 2 for 1. When you have the companion pass, your companion flies for 0 points. So you find whatever it costs you to book that round trip in points, and your companion flies free. So 0 points. And that's remarkable. So he's going to be able to go to Hawaii. I know they fly to many destinations in the Caribbean and Mexico. So there are definitely a lot of Southwest options, just even outside of the continental U.S. So they have an ever-expanding series of routes that they fly, and it just makes it all the more easy to use Southwest miles and all the more beneficial, frankly. So yeah, I mean, this companion pass is a real slam dunk. So again, congrats, Michael. That's good stuff.
And you know, Brad, my favorite part about that email was the part where he says he's racing his brothers to FI. And this is a concept that they didn't even know existed, 6 months or a year ago. That's how engaging this idea is once you latch onto it. And once you realize how many other people are doing it, I think the power of our community, we talked about FOMO at the beginning of this episode, and I was kind of laughing about it. And I think so many times FOMO gets used to get you to do something that you probably shouldn't be doing or is maybe not in your best interest. What's powerful, though, is when you're worried about missing out on this idea of achieving financial independence, when you know all these other people are doing it and they're ahead of you, it lights a fire under you, and suddenly you start aligning your actions in a way to get you there faster. So FOMO is being used to his advantage and to his brother's advantage, and they're going to claw back decades of their time. And just the fact that with this gives them access to Hawaii at a whim's notice. There's really no sacrifice here. There's no deprivation. It's a life of opportunity. And this world keeps getting smaller in the best way possible when you're in the FI community. So Doug Norman, who is the military guide, right? He has taken over the mantle, and he's working with Military Dollar as one of the admins of our military group. But what's so awesome about Doug is how open he is with his hobby of surfing. He has an open offer to anybody in the FI community that if you want to learn how to surf and you can make it to Oahu in Hawaii, he will teach you how to surf. And we have a Choose FI Honolulu group. They're going all in on this. So as a group, they're going to make one of their first meetups Doug's Beach, and he's going to teach all of them to surf. And now that you've got your Southwest Companion Pass figured out, I would encourage you, almost as a mandatory trip at some point over the next 3 years, to figure out how to coordinate, get yourself to Hawaii, meet up with the Choose FI Honolulu group, and take your family and go learn how to surf with Doug and the group down there. What an awesome aspirational goal. And people are doing this. In fact, Physician on Fire just took his family down there. His kids know how to surf now.
That is so cool. Yeah, I mean, what an amazing offer by Doug to teach anyone for free. He said he's got boards, he's got time, and this beautiful beach right there. So come on down. I mean, he's really an incredible guy. We've had the good fortune to meet him both at FinCon and at the most recent Camp FI in Florida. And yeah, just what an amazing offer. And for everyone out there, we constantly talk about travel rewards. We have a significant amount of resources on our website, choosefi.com. So just go to choosefi.com/travel, and you'll see some of our articles, our podcasts on travel rewards, and our recommended cards. So you can click through from any page there to our recommended cards list. And yeah, I mean, it's really a pillar of FI, and it's a nice, easy way to travel the world and use your smart financial and credit card habits to earn these miles to help you save thousands of dollars per year on travel. And actually, I wanted to mention Jonathan did an amazing job this past week on basically redoing the entire Choose FI website. So I'd recommend everybody out there just head over there. It's a gorgeous looking site. He spent, I can't even imagine how many dozens of hours redoing this. That's another one of your kind of talent stacks now, Jonathan, is you've figured out how to be a web designer. It's amazing what you've done, what you can do. And the site looks gorgeous, and it's so much more organized now, especially for new visitors, for people looking for content. I know we talked many times on the podcast how we have now dozens of writers from our community who are telling their story at choosefi.com. And it couldn't be easier to find the articles now. You just had to head to the website, hit latest articles up in the top menu bar, and you'll see the entire list of all these amazing writers. So yeah, head over there, read some articles, send some comments their way. People love to get feedback on these articles. So yeah, it's greatly appreciated. And yeah, Jonathan, just wanted to say a big thank you personally for doing all that work. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love the shout out. And you're right. It's part of the talent stack. I've been thinking about that. And I think at some point we should kind of step out of the FI role and talk about what our talent stack looks like, what it looks like now, and maybe what it looked like a year ago. And we can talk in particular about things we figured out as podcasters, things we figured out as bloggers, web designer, all these kind of little things that have come together. And then honestly, when you're talking about trying to grow a startup, those sorts of hacks have been put in place. I think there are enough business owners and entrepreneurial minds in our community that conversation would probably add value. And I'm certainly happy to do it. But one of the reasons that I felt so compelled to do the website redesign was exactly that, to help people get into our content faster and easier. That was one of my biggest things. Is I was getting feedback from people saying it didn't feel very structured. If they sent somebody to the website, it was hard for them to find out exactly where they should start. And we just wanted to make that as absolutely simple as possible. And hopefully it did that. There's one extra feature that I'll tell you about now that isn't really being advertised super well on the website, but it's coming. And that is, I have made an index page, a page with every single episode on one page. So when you hear us reference episode 47, episode 35, whatever it may be, and you want to go find that particular episode, there's now choosefi.com/index. Every single podcast episode with the number and the web page and the download button is there for you, so you can quickly listen to that follow-up episode if we in particular maybe dove into content that you found useful, but you wanted to get additional information. And then also we needed a way to scale this because new resources are becoming available every single day as our community reaches out to us and says, hey, I think I have something to add to the conversation. And in particular, I got an email from Olga out of Leeds in the UK, and she said, we're thinking of moving to South France, specifically the East Pyrenees. Beautiful place, great weather, access to the sea and mountains, and incredibly cheap property. Now, it wouldn't be easy to make a living there, but if you're FI, it could be just perfect. She said, I'm also tempted to go back to my hometown, which is a bikeable city. Everyone bikes there, an amazing culture, reasonably affordable housing in Krakow, Poland. What if you could crowdsource research and reviews for different countries and cities so that people thinking of trying international geo-arbitrage could make informed decisions? And I can tell you, I am all in on that hand. So I was thinking, Brad, what we should try to do when someone in our community, and we could even incorporate this into maybe part of a Friday roundup down the road. But when someone in our community does an epic, amazing trip and has a write-up on it, we need to create a place on the site to actually feature that content. And then what we can do to make it even more cool is then get someone to write up, and maybe it could even be you, write up how to get there using travel rewards. What's the most optimized way to get there? So it's like two different layers. You help people get to FI and speed up that process. And then you help people figure out what all they can do and take advantage of once they've reached FI. And then to make it even easier and tying in the pillar of travel rewards, you help them get there for free.
That's very cool, Jonathan. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, I mean, certainly geo-arbitrage is a massive part of people's future FI plans. So yeah, having this entire repository, let's say, of all this information it will be very, very helpful. So yeah, wonderful idea. And thank you, Olga, for priming us with that. Very cool.
Let's dream big together, my friends. All right, guys. Well, unfortunately, that's going to bring this episode to a close. As you know, we like to finish every episode by doing a drawing for a copy of a book that we have found useful. We're featuring 3 books these days. We're doing J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth, Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future, and my newest favorite, Vincent Puglisi's book, Freelance to Freedom, a phenomenal read as you look to reclaim control of your life and pursue freedom. And the way we do this, if you want to enter this drawing, it's super easy. Just go to choosefi.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there, leave us a short written review, and then just send us an email to feedback@choosefi.com, letting us know that you left the review and then what screen name you left it under. We give away 1 book for every 5 written reviews that we get, and we announce the winners on our Friday roundup. Brad, how many winners do we have today?
All right, Jonathan, we have 1 winner today, and the winner is Steve, and he called this my favorite podcast. Choosefi is definitely my favorite personal finance podcast, actually my favorite podcast of any sort. Brad and Jonathan are excellent and humble hosts who consistently strive and succeed at making the pursuit of financial independence extremely approachable and practical. I love finding inspiration and motivation for pursuing the good life twice a week. Keep it up, guys.
Steve, thank you so much for leaving the review. Honestly, guys, this is the number one way that you can help us. If you're getting value from the show, if you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point, just take a couple minutes this week and leave us a short written review. Like, It's a number one way that you can help us. And as we try to grow this platform and continue to add value to your life, this is the place that we want to land. Just do that one favor for us this week. Leave us a written review, and we would love to, in exchange, hook you up with a book that we have found useful. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.